All right, guys, so as always, when we talk about leaks and rumors on this channel, it is not 100% confirmed. You should not set all your hopes, dreams, and expectations on all of these things coming to pass. However, we have some exciting ones, if proven true, to unpack today. One of them having to deal with a list of games that should presumably show up at the next Nintendo Direct presentation, and the exact time frame of that presentation being the month, which, spoiler, it is not in June, but is very soon. And it's also coming to us from a new source on the leaking front, so no track record to go off of, but one that I'm almost positive each and every one of you watching this video know of because of the size of their following online. Then we also have a Square Enix interview that is definitely teasing Final Fantasy 16 coming to Switch 2, and I want to unpack the implications of that with you all. And for Mario Rabbids fans out there, some unfortunate news, because we already kind of knew we're probably not getting a third installment in this game, but now it's more or less come to light that that proposal was just flat out rejected. So we're going to break all of this down right after a quick word from today's video sponsor. If you ever wanted to design your dream home without worrying about budgets or blueprints, Architect Life is the game you need to check out. It's available now on Steam, PS5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch, and you can click the link in the description and pin comment down below to jump right in. You get to build full 3D homes from the ground up, tweak floor plans, make creative calls on site, and basically run your own architecture firm. There's even a full career mode where you unlock perks like solar panels, stilted homes, and building new tools as you level up. Or if you're more of a sandbox player, free mode lets you mess around with any mission or just create whatever you want without limits, and you could spend hours and hours in this mode getting truly creative. You can go back and revisit old builds and keep improving them as well. And yes, there's a bunch of cool touches too, like customizing your architect's desk and snapping gallery photos when you tour your finished houses. I'm also just a fan of the visual presentation of the game, as it looks beautiful and you can appreciate various different types of builds in different environments. Countryside, mountains, or out by the lake, it's up to you. Honestly, it's one of the most chill and creative sims I've played in a while. Architect Life is out now, so check it out in the description and pin comment down below and start designing today. Big thank you to Nacon for sponsoring today's video. Okay, and I want to first kick this off with the big headline story, and probably the biggest reason you clicked this video. We now have a new claim around when the next Nintendo Direct presentation will be there, and legitimately a list of games that should show up in this presentation. Now, what is interesting is the sourcing around this leak slash rumor. It is coming to us from Wood over at Beat 'em Ups, and I'm sure you guys know who this is. Massive following on YouTube, and he also has a podcast called the Nintendo Podcast, and on his most recent episode of that, he just flat out said, kind of teased to his podcast co-host that they know the source, but he can't say the source. He's not saying how he got this info, but just that he has the info, and he says some stuff rather confidently, does just quick disclaimer at the end of it, you know, kind of downplays, not staking his whole reputation on it, like maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. But here's the claim. So outlined over from Our Gaming Leaks and Rumors, you can see the following. Popular Nintendo YouTuber Beat 'em Ups claims there will be a Nintendo Direct next month, and the games in question that will be at this event. Metaphor ReFantasio. Now, I think that that's going to be kind of a no-brainer and an obvious one to come to Nintendo Switch 2. The only reason that game was likely missing from Nintendo Switch 1 this whole time is just a power limitation of the console itself. And yes, if you look at the Persona games and everything else from Atlas and their support for Nintendo over the years, that is just one that's been waiting this whole time to make it over to the console. And next up, he mentions a GameCube Shadow Drop and specifically teases Pokemon Coliseum. Now, I do believe that this is the likely time frame that we will see Nintendo start to add GameCube games, because if you remember, when we got N64 games added to NSO, it was in the month of October, and we waited a couple months. I think it was December or January by the time we got the first new round of updates for N64, and then they kind of started to loosely stick to a cadence of one new N64 game per month, and I'm expecting a very similar update schedule for GameCube. So Pokemon Coliseum up next as a Shadow Drop. What's interesting about that is, you probably know, we do have a Pokemon Presents confirmed for July 22nd. That is the fourth Tuesday in July, and it would be interesting to see the Pokemon Coliseum GameCube update Shadow Drop at the Nintendo Direct presentation when there is a Pokemon Presents happening that same month that Wood is claiming that this presentation is going to take place. Now, maybe that is the case and we do get the GameCube NSO update at the Direct, or the source knows that that's happening in July either way, and that Pokemon Coliseum GameCube update is actually going to drop at the Pokemon Presents that's already scheduled for July 22nd. I think both of those options are pretty likely, and it's just a coin flip in my opinion on when we see that game show up, but I do think that it makes sense, although I was in the mindset that we would likely get the Mario Strikers game added in next, because we actually saw that at Nintendo Live events. It was a listed game that was available on GameCube NSO, but it wasn't playable, so that kind of made me think that's probably the next one. But maybe it's time for Pokemon, since July is a big month for Pokemon anyway, and we will presumably learn more about Legends ZA and even probably a teaser for Gen 10 in my opinion. So Pokemon fans should be on high alert in the month of July. Okay, next up, Death Stranding Director's Cut S coming to Nintendo Switch 2. This is another one that I think that, you say it out loud, it does make sense. It's also not one that probably a lot of people have on their predictions list, but this is something that has come to PlayStation and Xbox, Series X and S, mind you. So my mindset as of now is anything that can comfortably run on the Series S, it should also be able to comfortably run on the Nintendo Switch 2. And I just think that this is one of those games that it's already multi-platform. Why not throw it on Nintendo's platform? And Nintendo is obviously talking about how they've really strengthened relationships with their partners this generation. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Death Stranding, it just doesn't seem like something that, as far as the gameplay loop, that I will super get into. It does have my interest peaked with the second one around the corner, and there's a chance that I would give this a shot on Switch 2 if we do indeed see it come out. And that would obviously lead you to believe that we should maybe get the second one at some point in time on Switch 2 if we do see this confirmed. Okay, next up, The Witcher 3 Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. Now, this is a big claim because The Witcher 3 was obviously a very successful title on the Nintendo Switch. It was one of those big kind of Cyberpunk 2077 style ports that was marketed literally the same way with Nintendo and CD Projekt Red back at the launch of Switch 1. And anything that is a Switch 2 edition is bigger than just some kind of patch or upgrade for $10. It's going to get a physical release, presumably with the Switch 2 edition, its own box art and all of that. And it's going to probably have that same upgrade path for $10 available to run and look better on the Nintendo Switch 2. Kind of think Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, exactly what happened to those games. 4K 60, faster load times, HDR, all of that stuff should be baked into this if proven true, and that's going to hit for a Switch 2 edition of The Witcher 3, according to this, if it does check out. Next up is the Metroid Prime 4 release date, which I think if there's one thing that is actually hands down guaranteed on this entire leak list, it is 100% that. Because it just makes no sense for Nintendo to continue to show a 2025 time slot for any longer for Prime 4. We had that London promotion poster that's been making the rounds online showing out now for Prime 4. I don't think it's a shadow drop, guys. I think it's clearly just a marketing mistake from the company that Nintendo hired to do their local marketing out there, and they forgot to switch out now for 2025, or maybe out now was just copy pasted by mistake from the Mario Kart World out now logo, because it looks exactly the same. Anyway, it's not going to be a shadow drop, but the release date for Prime 4 we should actually expect to see at this presentation. My money is on September personally for this one. I think that makes a lot of sense in Nintendo's release schedule, and listen, I just can't wait to play through all of the 40 to 60 hours or whatever the length of this game is going to be that Prime 4 has to offer. It may not make it into the Game of the Year contender list. It may, but this is probably going to go down as my Game of the Year personally. I've been waiting till a long time to play this. So as long as Retro didn't screw it up, and I don't think they did, I think they took their time with this, creating a masterpiece. I cannot wait to play it personally. The big thing, and this is going to be huge for a lot of people, if this does indeed check out. The one more thing that he is teasing Wood over at Beat 'em Ups that he has heard is that Isabelle is going to be there, and it's a teaser for Animal Crossing in 2026. Now, this one's very interesting to me because this would be another big feather in the cap, let's say, for Nash Weedle, because you might remember we talked about him teasing a big Animal Crossing game in 2026, and he said specifically things like you would move around controlling vehicles, big city with skyscrapers, adventure missions, puzzles and mini games, more collaborative multiplayer, and the date is 2026 along with a series. So actually saying like it's going to get some kind of, I guess, animation show, presumably. So this will be a big one because he put this out there as of March 12th, 2024. And if the timeline actually does end up lining up and we get a 2026 teaser for Animal Crossing, that's going to also, that much more proof that we need to pay attention to more of his leaks that he's put out over the course of time. But obviously, Animal Crossing, sales perspective wise, was one of the biggest, in fact, only second to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in terms of sales. It's how successful that game was on the Switch 1 generation. Over 40 million copies sold. Yes, Nintendo's going to want to get this out relatively soon into Switch 2's life cycle, I believe, because this is going to be a big one that actually moves the needle for enough people that have a Switch 1 that are holding off on getting a Switch 2. It's going to be a system seller. There's going to be a percentage of gamers that will literally go out there and buy a Switch 2 just because this game is exclusive to the Switch 2. So if that is the show closer, and it is big enough to be a show closer, that would be massive. So we have to wait and see if this July rumor checks out and if it is indeed what we end up seeing take place. But I do like the chances. I felt like this entire time that Nintendo would be doing something over the summer. I actually still like the chances of the end of June direct time slot. But if that does not happen, early July does make the most sense. I'm thinking the first 2 weeks. So anytime from the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of the first week, which would be the first, second, or third, through the 8th, 9th, or 10th, I think are all likely dates for that direct to take place that Wood is teasing here. And listen, regardless, I don't think we end up waiting all the way until September to hear more news and game updates from Nintendo. They're either going to drop stuff individually in a big way on stuff like the Nintendo Today app, which they revealed Splatoon Raiders at, or we are going to have this traditional direct presentation, which is obviously the more exciting option. And I think we're going to see it. So next up, if you are a fan of the Final Fantasy franchise and you have a Switch 2, or you're going to be picking one up in the near future, this will probably be an exciting story for you, because you can see over at My Nintendo News the following write-up, which outlines Square Enix apparently trying to get Final Fantasy 16 running on Nintendo Switch 2. Final Fantasy VII producer Mr. Yoshida and creative director My Hero has seemingly hinted that they are trying to get Final Fantasy 16 up and running on the Nintendo Switch 2. At a recent event talking about the game's arrival on Xbox Series X and S, Yoshida apparently said there's just Nintendo left when talking about platforms that the mainline Final Fantasy game is currently available on, with My Hero saying he will do his best. The action RPG has some intense graphical sequences, namely with the econ, so it'll be interesting to see if they can achieve this without too many compromises. And again, I think that we're in the realm of Series S with all of the DLSS and different technology that these devs have available to get games running up to acceptable frame rate and performance on the Switch 2. So this game's coming out for Series S. It's already, I think it was a shadow drop. I think it's already out for Xbox Series X and S. So however the performance of that kind of looks on the Series S version is similar to what I'm expecting to see the performance of the Switch 2 version look like. And I think we're getting this. If you don't believe any of the interview teases, we just have confirmation from Square Enix from their own investor briefings that they're going aggressively multi-platform, their words exactly, this generation, and just moving forward in general. So all of the Square Enix games, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth, the third installment, now Final Fantasy 16, not to mention Kingdom Hearts 4 is out there in development. All that stuff's coming to Switch 2. Maybe not day and date. It is coming at some point though, and I do think that this one is going to be one of those rumors that checks out. And then we lastly, to quickly close this out, have an update and unfortunate news for fans of the Mario Plus Rabbids team, because you can see this posted up over on our Gaming Leaks and Rumors. Ubisoft's Mario Plus Rabbids team pitched a new game concept before disbanding, but proposal was rejected by Ubisoft. So for anyone wanting to know the main part, during the latest episode of the Game Business Show on YouTube, host Christopher Dring and co-host Christopher Plant talked about market data for Nintendo Switch 2 around third-party games. Dring brought up the development team behind the Mario Plus Rabbids series, noting that it has largely been disbanded. Although Ubisoft Milan still exists, he mentioned that people behind the series have gone to form a new studio. Dring also said he's aware that the Mario Plus Rabbids team pitching a new game in the series that didn't get approved. He doesn't know why this was the case, but it's something that didn't go forward, and he believes the reason was tied to Nintendo. It's possible that Ubisoft was looking to publish a multi-platform title, and Nintendo wasn't interested in pursuing a venture of that nature with its Mario IP. So if that was indeed the case, and Ubisoft is like, hey, listen, we'll do it, but we want it to be multi-platform, clearly we know that Nintendo's not letting any of their IP really show up on any other platform other than mobile. So if it's going to Sony or Microsoft and those consoles, Nintendo's pretty much out of the deal. even some opportunities we've heard of, like Samus being added into Fortnite, which would obviously be huge exposure for Samus Aran and exposing a lot of new kids to that franchise. Nintendo still is like, no, it's Metroid. That's an in-house IP. Can't have it on other consoles. You can add her in specifically on Nintendo's platform, but nothing else besides that. And so, of course, that didn't go through. It's possible that that's what it is because Ubisoft was not necessarily happy with the sales of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. We have official comments of them mentioning that in the past, and this seems like one of those things where they thought the audience isn't quite there on Switch 2 for a new iteration in terms of what the sales volume might look like for this franchise. So looks like Mario plus Rabbids fans might be a while before we ever see another attempt at a game in this franchise, which is definitely unfortunate if you are a fan of the RTS gameplay style and the crossover there. But let me know in the comments down below what you make of all the different stories we talked about today. Are you hopeful for a July Direct? And do you think that the list that we got from beat 'em ups will indeed end up checking out and that this source is good? Do you think it's something that maybe, he's heard it, but it's not reliable enough to go off of? And where are you setting your expectations around this particular leak? And would you pick up something like Final Fantasy 16 on Nintendo Switch 2 if we do see it drop? And finally, are you sad to see the news that maybe Mario plus Rabbids won't be a thing going forward, or is it a franchise that you didn't really worry about too much to begin with? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.